In this video, we're looking at Unit 1, the camera, and this is Lesson 2. In particular, we're going to be looking at how to use a digital point and shoot. It's not an SLR camera like Lesson A was on an SLR camera. This is Lesson B. This is going to be more like a point and shoot. Some of your options when it comes to a point and shoot may look, this is probably only about 4 or 5 years old, this camera right here. This is another example of what your camera may look like. It does not have a detachable lens, and it has some of the settings up here on top. There's another kind of point and shoot that maybe looks more like this. This is not geared towards a point and shoot like this because this point and shoot camera does not have manual functions. This is all automatic functions. So if you can, try to find yourself one that has the manual functions. So we'll be doing it for this camera right here for today. Okay, this is what the end result should look like. This is an example using SLR camera, but it's going to be the exact same thing for the point and shoot camera. It's going to go onto your photography page on your portfolio, and you're going to call it Unit 1, the camera. And you're going to take a picture of the front of the camera and the back of the camera. And you're going to showcase the highest ISO, which is right here. The lowest ISO on this camera is right here. The fastest shutter speed is illustrated here. The slowest shutter speed is here. Smallest aperture is right here, this 22. And the largest aperture is 1.4. And how to set it on the manual setting, as well as the monochrome setting. And optional for this is the tripod. You can do the tripod setting, set it up on a tripod if you have one at home. A lot of my students won't have one at home, so this is an optional. So there's 10 pictures I want you to take and 11 if you happen to have a tripod. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this camera. This camera, you can see the lens cover is a little bit different. All it does is it closes automatically when you turn it on and off. On this particular camera, the on-off button is right here. You turn that on and it opens up the lens. On the front of the camera, when you take the first picture, you're going to notice it gives me some information about the lens and how much it can zoom. It also tells me what kind of aperture settings I can have at the bottom here, 3.5 to 5.9. And what millimeter the lens is. It also has the model number on this side right here. So it's really good to get a nice picture of this camera. And you can see at the bottom here, it says 16 megapixels. It also lets me know how large your pictures can be. Then the second thing you're going to do is take a picture of the back to see what it looks like. This gives me a good idea if I'm helping you throughout the course. I know what kind of camera you're working with and what kind of buttons we need to be pushing to find the things that you need to find. Okay, so let's dive in. First thing we need to do is we need to notice that I have it on manual. Always set your camera to manual first because that's how you can manually set all the different settings that we're going to find today. So set your camera to manual and let's go in and look for the ISO. ISO is right here on this camera. So if I click the shutter halfway, it wakes it up. Okay, because it goes to sleep every now and then. I shut it halfway, it wakes it up. Just another side note, if you click it halfway, it also focuses your camera like that. Okay, so I'm going to click on the upper part of this wheel and it's going to open up ISO. And I see my options right here, 100 to 1600. I want to learn how I'm going to set that. So actually what I need to do is click ISO. And on this, I actually turn the wheel and it lets me choose the ISO. So my smallest ISO is 100. So I click set because I've got the ISO, I've got it set. And when I take my picture, I want to make sure that I include, oops, where did it go? That I include my ISO setting by clicking right here. Oops, my bad. Click set and take the picture using ISO. Okay, so make sure you take the picture that shows, clearly illustrates that you are in ISO 100. The next you're going to do is you're going to go to the highest ISO. You're going to turn the wheel all the way up to 1600 and take your picture up there too. Okay, so the next setting I want us to look for is shutter speed on this camera. Okay, first I'm going to change the ISO here so it's not so bright. There we go. Okay, so how do we change our shutter speed on here? Shutter speed is illustrated right here. It's illustrated through a fraction. And this one is 1/40, so 1/40th of a second. And notice there on this particular one, there's green arrows on either side. That means this is active to be able to move it and change it. And guess what? You're going to use the same wheel to change your shutter speed. Okay, I'm going to go all the way to one side and then all the way back to the other side. Okay. On this camera, the shortest amount or the quickest shutter speed that I have, the fastest shutter speed that I have is 1/2000. So I'm going to take a picture with the 1/2000. So that is the fastest shutter speed that you can have. On my SLR that I have from the other video, it was 1/4000 was the quickest you can have. Every camera will have a different speed that it can get to. Okay, so once you take a picture there, I want you to scroll all the way around and go the opposite direction. It comes a little bit harder to see. This camera can get to 15, and then there's two little marks outside of the 15. That means seconds. That means the shutter is open for an entire 15 seconds. So that's how long this camera can open its shutter. That's really important information to know going forward with some of the lessons that we have coming up. So take a picture of your 15 seconds. All right. Now that we've done shutter speed, it's time to move next to it to the aperture. Aperture is sometimes indicated with an F in front of it. F meaning f-stop. So right now, if I'm to change my shutter speed, remember the green arrows right here? It's selected for shutter speed, but I want to change this. So how am I going to change this on this red camera? On this particular camera, not every camera, you're going to push this black and white button right here. And notice what it does. It switches those green arrows. And it's like, okay, now I want to change the f-stop. So if I click on this, then I can come over here and I can scroll to change my f-stop. So I want you to take the largest f-stop on this one is 3.5. And then you scroll down and take a picture of the smallest f-stop is f8.0. Now, just a word of caution, this camera, this is what you're paying for. It's a cheaper camera. There's only $119. So you're getting a very small range of f-stops. So the difference between 3.5 and 8 is very, very minimal. It's not going to give you the full effect as something like an SLR camera. But I want you to remember that or know that the f8, even though it's a larger number, it actually indicates a smaller opening, a smaller hole of an aperture, whereas the 3.5 is a larger opening like this. So it's kind of opposite. The larger the number, like the 8, the f8 is actually a smaller opening. Okay? All right, so now that we found those three crucial parts, the ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, I want you to make sure you get a picture of your camera on the manual setting. And then I want you to find the black and white setting of your camera. And this camera is going to be totally different than any other camera, okay? On this camera, you're going to go to Function, and you're going to scroll to My Colors. And then you can see there's several options for all the different colors that you can have. And you can choose sepia or whatnot. I want you to choose black and white. Once you click on that, and then take a picture and make sure you clearly indicate that it's on the black and white setting. Some cameras will call it monochromatic. Some cameras don't even have this. If it doesn't have it, just write it when you turn it in and say, my camera doesn't have this option. Some cameras make you do the black and white function afterwards, which I find a disservice because I really like being able to see the composition in black and white before I take the picture. Okay, so you got the black and white setting, you got the manual setting. The last thing is an optional thing. If you have one of these at home, It is a tripod. Okay. On the tripod, you open it up like this and you extend the legs like this. You always start extending from the top upper part first, because this is a stronger part, before you ever extend from the bottom part. And on the settings here, if you want to increase the height, because still your tripod is not getting high enough, you can increase it by cranking it up like this. But again, this is more unstable, so only crank it up when you absolutely have to. Don't do it unless you have to. To let you know, on this particular one, you lock this in place just like that so it doesn't fall down on you, and you unlock it and then you can crank it back down. For this part right here, you twist it and then you can move it up and down, move it forward. You can twist this to move your camera sideways like that. And then you untwist this knob right here and you can move it side to side like that. But how do we get it onto the tripod? So you open this up, and this is called the quick release. It's really nice because then you don't have to always attach it to the tripod. What you do is you attach the quick release to the threads underneath your camera. Most cameras will have this. I don't know of many that don't. And you put it in snug, but you don't put it in too tight. If you put it in too tight, that will cause a problem for you getting it out. Okay. So once you got it in there snug, you're ready to put it onto your tripod. You have the quick release. The good thing is I can still take pictures freehand like this, or I can set it inside of my tripod and lock it in place just like that. And now I'm ready to take pictures on my tripod. Okay, that's all I want you to do for this unit. Make sure you put it into your Google Sites and then submit it on Google Classroom for credit. Thank you.